What do you see as the big headlines so far tonight, David?
Well, I think the big headline, no doubt, obviously, is that, one of the houses of Congress has gone now to the Democratic Party, and Donald Trump is waking up to a new world order in Washington and for his presidency. How that happened, I also think, is as big of a headline, which is that we saw in the suburbs across this country and independent voters across this country, two parts of Trump's winning 2016 coalition have abandoned him with gusto.
Which two?
That is a pretty big rebuke.
And tell the people which two they were.
The suburbs and independents. That's what I'm saying. Those two groups. And then obviously, this is such a female-powered victory for the Democrats, both in terms of the candidates, but in terms of female voters who delivered this majority in many ways for the Democrats.
We're seeing that the party, the Republican Party, has transitioned now fully under President Trump. To David's point, but just to build it out a little bit for people, because it's going to be a little bit of a surprising narrative and for Republicans something to swallow and accept. You've switched collars, okay? You've gone from white to blue. You have switched when it comes to college. You're trading away college-educated people for non-college education. You're going from country now is where you are. The cities, suburbs, not so much. And you're moving away from kids, Caitlin, because when you look at the votes, they lost 67% of people 18 to 29. That's a big block. So all the different areas of the country that are growing, the Republican Party is moving away from. That's something to think about.
Right. We're seeing the Republican Party transform under Trump from this traditional, what we saw, the values that they had, to now the way that they're changing, even on trade. So many different aspects of what the Republican Party used to be is changing. One big question and one big thing I think we focused on is what it's going to be, how much of a pain it's going to be for President Trump to have Democrats in control of the House. But I also think it's a risk for conservatives that President Trump could abandon them and make a deal with Democrats. We saw some of that when he met with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer at the White House last year to talk about immigration, calling them Chuck and Nancy affectionately. That is something that is a real risk for them, I think, still. That they have transformed their party to fit Donald Trump, and he could abandon them in a heartbeat. This is someone who used to be a Democrat. I don't think it's that far out there to say that when the Democrats are here, that President Trump could sit down with them and make a deal with them in the next year or so.
Anything's possible in the new normal. Nancy Pelosi said the American people want peace. They want bipartisanship. We'll see what that means, because Elijah Cummings came right out and said, we want his taxes. Now, of course, the committee we believe he'll sit on, he won't have that authority. That'll be Ways and Means. Right. That's part of a longer story. But to Caitlin's point, okay, on one side, there's an open question of concern. On the other side, for Republicans, there's a question of comfort. This cushion that's developing in the Senate, Dana, that means confirmations are a very different, different process for them. They don't have to worry about Murkowski and Collins the same way anymore, in all likelihood.
That cushion is huge. It absolutely is huge, because not only is it going to give the president a lot more breathing room and Mitch McConnell a lot more running room on confirmations, not just for his cabinet, but other judicial nominations that could be coming for the next 2 years. I mean, we just don't know. Obviously, the federal bench below the Supreme Court is one thing, but you never know what's going to happen. That's a huge thing, and it takes away the power of the moderates, not only on the Republican side, because Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski are not going to be sort of the kingmakers, but also what you've seen is a loss after loss after loss of moderate Democrats. So there is going to be even more partisanship, even more gridlock potentially in the U.S. Senate, because the middle is shrinking even more in a place where you need those centrists to make deals to get anything done, especially with the House.
And it's interesting to see what's happening with King up in Maine. Now, obviously, that's one of the states that you put under the disaster kit tab here in the notebook for what to do, because they have their own special process. We're going to see how it plays out. But King is one of those figures that you're talking about, somebody who can breach both sides. We'll see if he makes the cut tonight, David.
But politically, that pad in the Senate, I think, represented something that we learned tonight also, which is that Donald Trump, 2 years into this process, still has a unique ability to get his folks jazzed up in where he is most supported in the country, as you just broke down the new Trump party, which obviously is not Nelson Rockefeller's Republican Party, right?
Not at all.
But he has a unique ability and attachment to his supporters that still exists today, where he went to travel to hang on to the Senate or pad it he was able to do so successfully, even while he was bleeding all these other voters. That creates a Democratic House.
And the question is that trade-off worth it? Is it worth it for the president to go where he won comfortably, to focus on the Senate, as he said, because he wanted to cover himself? So when the Democrats did win the House, as he was being told by White House officials, this is increasingly likely, this is going to happen, he didn't want it to be seen as a rebuke of him. He made that crystal clear in the last few weeks, saying, I'm focused on the Senate. But the question is that focus on the Senate going to be worth the trade-off in the House, having Adam Schiff in the House Intelligence Committee as the chairman, all of these subpoenas, this party that he's demonized for weeks now, they now have the power to subpoena his cabinet officials that have been accused of wrongdoing. So many problems that they are going to be facing in the next few months.
Well, the president was working on something called convenience. When he thought he had a shot in the House, he was big on the House. As that started to fade, so did his focus. But you're going to see a very sharp focus from the new people in charge of the House, that's for sure. What that means, we'll have to see, because that's a calculation for the Democrats as well. Do they go all in on checking the president? Is that what their party wants? Is their party wanting just one thing? A lot of questions are going to follow from tonight. We're still in decision mode, though. Let's get back over to Nia Malika. You have another projection in a governor's race. What is it?
That's right, Chris. Some history in South Dakota tonight. Kristi Noem, CNN projects, is the winner in that governor's race. She is the first woman elected governor in South Dakota, defeating Billy Sutton tonight. So a bit of history tonight. About 16 women ran tonight, and she's one of the winners. Now, we can go to the map here. You see here that Democrats have 4 pickups tonight. Of course, they came into the night at a bit of a deficit in terms of the governorships. Republicans were very much at an advantage. And you see tonight some Republican holds. In Florida, for instance, a Republican hold. In Ohio, another Republican hold. So you have a map here that looks good for Republicans in some key battleground states. And then you have some flips as well for Democrats. You look at Michigan, for instance. That was a pickup and a flip for Democrats. You look at Illinois, for instance. That was a pickup and a flip for Democrats. Pennsylvania, that was a hold for Democrats. But listen, they came into the night, Democrats did, really wanting to have 6 pickups. They've got 4 so far. And now we're going to go to Georgia. This was another race that we've obviously been watching all night long. Brian Kemp still up by about a similar margin, about 115,000 votes ahead of Stacey Abrams in that closely watched Georgia race. We can go to Wisconsin now. Tony Evers, his lead has shrunk a little bit here. It's about 3,000 votes at this point over Scott Walker, the incumbent at this point. Such a closely watched race. It's 0.1% right now, 94% reporting. We're going to keep an eye on this one. Back to Chris.
All right, Nia Malika, thank you very much. So we just got a projection in a governor's race. We also have some more in the Senate that we're watching. What do we know? And we have the House races as well. What do we have?
Well, one of the fascinating things, and you mentioned this at the beginning about what we're seeing in the House, is the number of women.
Yep.
And it is now at record numbers, absolute record numbers. And let's just look at a couple of the examples. Abigail Spanberger, she is a fascinating character. She was in the CIA. Never mind that she beat the Republican Dave Bratt, who took down the House Majority Leader, the Republican Eric Cantor. She's a really interesting female character. And then also, let's go next to Abby Finkenauer. She is 29 years old. She's going to be one of the youngest members of the House of Representatives from the state of Iowa. And now, a name that we've seen a lot in the past several months, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. She is another person who beat a very well-known, very long-serving member of Congress. In this case, it was a fellow Democrat, Joe Crowley. She is also 29 years old. She's going to be among the new faces in the new class of young women serving in the House of Representatives. And here's another new face that we're going to see in the halls of Congress, Sharice Davids. She is the first Native American to serve in the U.S. Congress, in the U.S. House, I should say, which is female, I should say. And that's pretty remarkable, given the history of this country, that has taken this long for that to happen.
And you're seeing first checking so many different boxes. You know, obviously gender as women coming forward, really bailing out the Democrats in this. If they didn't have these women in these races, you don't see the results that you have tonight. Mm-hmm. The age is really relevant. Some of them are first historically within their own state. You know, when you're talking about Finkenauer and Spanberger, you're going to see some first. In Iowa, you know, they have Joni Ernst there.
She was the first senator.
She was the first senator. Finally now, Iowa, the heartland, they have their first female congresswoman. But now, you have to figure out what kind of Democrat they're going to be. And that's going to be a developing narrative. There's no reason to rush through all the implications when we still don't know all the projections. But what is the Democratic Party now with this new flush of talent that they owe a lot to for winning these races? But what are they going to want in return? It's going to be a big developing narrative. Let's look on the board